with Spirit of Matter, and this video is basically I was cruising Twitter, and even before that, these days when I come up with something, and the last time I did this in a video, it was 241 views, so thank you for all the viewers. I had this in mind about the medical profession. So for those of you who do not know, what I did in my thesis proposal, which I did not write, and you have it in my description to my channel, what the journey was, in snippets. It was about epistemic view on how do the medical profession, both alternative or complementary or shamanistic or whatnot, medications and academically trained medication. I cannot call it conventional anymore because it's not even conventional after COVID, but I was doing that before COVID. And how do these view the question of the body-mind? So I was just doing a thesis proposal. I had no idea what will happen in the world. And now I see the astrology community and magical community kind of raging over people mentioning medical terms, or medical cases, or their ability to assist in medical cases or to save children or whatnot, and being kind of some people, it makes them so enraged. Okay? And it makes them enraged because they believe it is preying on the hopes of people, and privatizing medication even more. So there are many points of view to this. I just want to kind of, without calling people out, because it's not about calling people out, it's about having a discourse, and put in my input as a person who looked into the epistemic standards for empiricism, into how do we know that we know, that is used in medical research, with all the pros and cons by that. Starting from learning that the amount of anesthesia that you're given before a surgery is basically calculated by the amount of medium-sized mice that can fit in your body. So it's like 4 mice is here. So if we do the face, we maybe need more than that, and so on and so forth. And so it's reasonable, but you need to understand that this is what it is. Okay? It's not. Um, it's not calculating the passage of a photon. It's not, and it kind of is it the same way. It's kind of like making prediction of where would we discover the next planet, which I think you can do if you do both astrology and astronomy. It's kind of predicting, it's like engineering. What happened if I press this button? What happened if I did this? Well, science says, and then there is science-based medicine, there is science-based medicine and evidence-based medicine. The names are both misleading. Science-based medicine basically means we are only conducting experiments if there is scientifically accepted norm about the theory that is behind our experiment. That means most experiments that we're doing today with medications are not qualifying for that because they go by evidence-based medicine. Okay, okay, so there I am saying my thesis proposal. And evidence-based medicine, it's a computation of several factors. One of the main factors is double-blind randomized control tests that isolate a single chemical product and try to see what it does. What if we give this to patients? And then we usually, yes, there are now more experiments conducted on people of color, on people with wombs or women, which I think the experiments are not, they have to separate people with wombs in general, then people who were born with a womb and people who were not, like women who, or people with a person who is with the womb but is taking hormones for a sex gender. Like all of these categories, we have to isolate them, and then you would have to do different researches. I don't even know if it's done, Now, the medical profession as a whole um, is moving towards more holistic, mathematical. Okay, some of it is machine learning, some of it is stuff that I don't even know, but they're building mathematical models to model things in a way that is more similar to traditional Chinese medicine. And the reason they are doing that is because the unit, okay, the ontological unit is what I'm looking at. Epistemology is how I'm looking at something. How do I know that I know? And ontology is what am I looking at. So the ontological unit called the human being is more complex and a holistic approach is needed. Okay? I can give you the most rigorous scientific evidence-based double-blind controlled tests that I gave a sugar pill to these people and I gave I don't know calmazepine. Don't ever agree to use this. It's beta blockers. It's horrid. I talk about this like no. If you can do anything other than that, it's better. Um, so let's say I do this research and this calmazepine is proven to kill people, at least 20% of the people in so much research, and it's still given to people. I'll buy the class suits, I'll buy everything. So I know for sure that adding this calmazepine or olanzapine or whatnot is killing people. What I don't know for sure is that it's helping people. Especially so since you hardly have a person taking one medication. Okay, so this is the problem with evidence-based medicine. The good thing with evidence-based medicine, that is correlation-based model of study, is that you can say, well, this works. I don't know how, I don't know why. Yet if you look at astrology, for many people, it's like, I don't know why, I don't know how. This works, this seems to work, okay. And then because you understand, you don't know why, you don't know how, if it shows that, hey, this no longer works, so like, okay, let's try to isolate the cases where this works and where this doesn't work. Okay, and now you're getting more holistic. But the thing is that it's very difficult to isolate a component in a holistic unit as a human being and to believe that you've got it right. On the other hand, when I looked at high peer reviewed, how do you call it, the Q, I think, a Q1, Q2. So when I looked at Q1, Q2s of peer reviewed medical papers on herbs, the number one complaint of MDs towards what they were saying, and they were doing the same thing as the medical people, like they were doing this something very much like singularly, like taking a chemical within the herb and trying to see what it does and so on and so forth. If you study, and I studied aromatherapy later, because I didn't feel comfortable to actually write the thesis without having applied praxis. When I'm writing about an applied science, and I saw that, let's say you do take basil, okay? So you're not taking a component of basil. You take the herb, you look at how it grows, you look at what it does, you look at the more shamanistic view. And then you understand when does your patient needs the wisdom of basil. Okay, it's very different to trying to do light quantum studies on a human being. Like it's very different to that. Yes, there is still merit in isolating components. Yes, it is still interesting, but a holistic unit is not going to act the same. Yeah, just why, if you watch Dr. Berg, then he explains why synthetic vitamins are so harmful sometimes. I saw even, I don't know the name of the person, there was a study about a certain sort of vitamin E that is synthetic. So if the vitamin E is synthetic, it causes cancer, and it's something that's known to the medical field, but it is still sold. So, and today I saw there was an article about Johnson and Johnson talc that they were sued for having, sit still, asbestos in their talc. And like I said, with vitamin E, that it was DL triptynocol or something like that. So the DL is considered causing cancer. Then the problem is like, hey, we knew that causes cancer. Why did you not remove it? But when they first discovered that this causes cancer, it's something. It happens to anyone. It can happen. It can happen. Um, if I give, not with cancer, right? But if I give, let's say, orange essential oil, and I give it diluted, I do it very well, but my patient is having allergic response. So what do? We say, don't take that. I don't know what to do with that. Don't take that, right? We can try to look at the allergy holistically, sex chakra relations, maybe this, maybe that. Okay, fine, we can work with that, and I have worked with that with me. But the initial response is, if you don't feel good with that, at least right now, don't take that. Okay, I'm talking about simple allergy, not life risking. Um, and so all of these things, when we talk about the medical field, we have tremendous gaps where I saw a person that I actually really like, and he was working for the ER. And later he did stand up, and I was so happy for him that he started doing stand up, because it was showing that the ER, like the working conditions there, were totally like destructive to mankind. Our doctors really need care, and they really need good working conditions. Doctors and nurses, same for me, like a healthcare person. Um, I appreciate them all. So what they were joking about is that an ER case? Like, is that an emergency? And yes, absolutely, people come with all kind of things that are not emergencies. And they were talking about a person that came with cramps, as if that was not an emergency. I nearly shuddered, because I know of so many cases of people dealing with endo, sometimes due as a result or after traumatic events like sexual boundary violation and other stuff. Sometimes not necessarily, like it doesn't necessitate that you've had, I'm not saying or proposing that you necessarily had a sexual trauma if you're dealing with endo. But these people going to the doctors, and the doctors thinking it's not an emergency. Oh, it's just cramps. And no, this is endometriosis. It's a medical condition that needs tending to on a holistic level, yes, of course, but it needs tending to. And these people need to be seen, need to be validated. Um, so those kind of things, or I've seen women that were told that they will never be able to have children, and that's how they got pregnant. I've had a social worker that happened to her. The doctor said would never be able to have children. Later on, she was pregnant. She told me the doctor said that I stopped taking pills, and then I got pregnant. Okay, now she's having 2 or 3 children. Um, and like these things happen. Okay, so you can't, when we are treating a human being, I'm speaking both as a medical, non-medical, holistic health practitioner, because that's what I studied to do the applied, that I can understand what I'm talking about and not just write, theory. And as a person who looked at the epistemic standards for empiricism in the medical field regarding the question of non-duality, the question of body and mind, or spirit and matter, or whatever you want to call it. So what happens, and we saw that when we talked about standardization in astrology. If I went to a physics department, and I said, okay, what would it, let's say if I wanted to do a PhD in physics or something like that, would I be able to incorporate things to do with spirituality or energy, or like energy, not in the like physical energy? And they were like, oh, we're absolutely pro that. We're absolutely pro that. Like they were, so while the physical sciences, the rigorous sciences, the conventional sciences are looking into those people that we call charlatans, to try to understand the world from a different point of view, the people who are doing these sciences, instead of shining, are trying to standardize themselves to look like medical practitioners. Okay? And then what happens is, there are just so many points. I'm just going to go across them by, random. It can be a situation of language. Okay, so a person who learned medicine in the academia um, is getting pissed at a person who's doing more shamanic medicine, medical style, and doesn't use the terms correctly. And I'm saying, like I literally wrote, this is just like a shaman person bashing an MD for not knowing what is chakras. It's like it doesn't make sense. You do medicines in different ways, then you speak different languages. Okay, if I speak English and you speak Spanish, and you know what? I'm half Dutch. Okay, I was studying Netherlands, actually in Israel, because I was born and raised here. And one of the people I was studying with was Russian. And so, how do you congratulate good morning in Netherlands? You say goedemorgen. And the short version is goeie, goeiedag, goeie. Now, goeie in Russian is a curse. Something like go fuck yourself, or something like something like really horrid. Worse than go fuck yourself. I don't remember. It's like, uh, so it's like this Russian person, she can laugh at it, but it's like this Russian person is like, oh, they like these Dutch people. How can they do medicine? They don't even know how to say good morning. They curse each other for a good morning. Like, no, this is different cultures, and we must accept that if one person is doing, let's say, shamanistic work, then a medical person who was studying, I don't know, the heart components and so on and so forth, will use a different language. And that does not mean that the two people are not talking about the same thing, and sometimes even saying the same thing but with different languages. So this is one thing that happens within the um, medical field, where people just, they learn this jargon, this person learned that, like you're a group of cults where you're trying to treat a patient. And the other thing is, like I said, there's the gaps where a patient is not taken seriously and being misdiagnosed. That leaves a huge, that concerns me way more than a talismanic vendor saying, oh, if you buy this, then this will help save your baby from dying. Because at the end of the day, it's the person who is dealing with life risk and situation and is being um, canceled as you're being hysterical, or people who deal with non-dual experiences following trauma are being categorized as psychotic and being given beta blockers. And what does a beta blocker do? Now, it can seem logical. It's like beta blocker, it shuts down the body systems that tell you that you're, let's say, if you're at risk, at life risk, then all the body systems that tells you that you're at risk are being shut down. So it's being used as anti-anxiety. So it's kind of like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, but if your patient is dying, then you won't know about this until this is too late. Now, what happens for people who deal with violence? They talk and talk and they're not being heard. So both because they can't speak about what actually happened because it's freaking secret, and they'll freaking die if they try to. And as they try to speak in the language that they can speak, because you must speak about it, you must let it out of your system. Now with Mars and Cancer, talking about this helps, right? Or solving problems by sharing, your feelings. Um, you must speak about this. And then what happens is that the person is not heard, is categorized as psychotic. They don't get actual treatment. In the past, they also used to say, do not engage with psychotic content, which is like even worse because the person does not even get to process what they've been through. They're being seen as a person who sees reality wrong, While in fact, instead of being validated for what happened to them, and healing and being in the body and not having endo, or how do you call it, fibro. It's like the other type of trauma based physical ailment. So these people are not imagining. Like, let's begin with understanding that, and then this is how approaches like open dialogue for if you look at the body mind questions. So how come open dialogue treats psychosis by validating people, listening to people? When it's practiced in Finland, they will have housing, they will have independent housing. Okay, so a person is given autonomy and validation and being provided for and being seen as a part of society. Okay, so now we are healing the trauma that caused them to be sexually assaulted to begin with, or psychologically assaulted, or going through a certain type of abuse or violence. Okay, it's not necessarily sexual trauma. Not like, I don't want to do the other, like the 180. We're saying, oh, everybody that has a mental ailment has been to sexual trauma. No, but it's like we're actually looking at the person. Okay, if you come to me, and I don't currently offer one-to-one consultations in medical relations, if you come to me and I look at you, I ask you a dozen questions. At the end of the day, what do I have? I have what I've learned about the body. Okay, if I'm an MD, I have the 7 years of medicine that I learned about things. There are 1,500 possible diagnoses for every symptom you come to the ER with. Okay, this is medical research. This is the part of the things that I was quoting in my thesis proposal. 1,500 possible diagnoses for people who come for every symptom to the ER. And that is a part of what brought me to do this channeling experience, because I was like, wait. The doctors who manage to actually treat patients, either they are really lucky, okay, at the gamble, and there really are a lot of misses. Okay, medical, like, medicine is important. That being said, it has also created a lot of misses. It's also killed people unnecessarily, and that is also the case. Okay, so if I'm an MD, then I would have to deal with that. If I'm a channeler, then I would have to deal with the billions of biases that relate to me being a vessel for the channeling. So there are biases here and there are biases there. And the most I can do, I can learn about chakras, I can learn about holistic, what does each body says. Okay, so the feet is your path in life. So this, so that. Okay, like, okay, fine. And it's also backed up astrologically. Jupiter ruling Pisces, ruling the feet, ruling also the lungs, ruling the hips in. If you take Sagittarius as ruler of Sagittarius, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, if we can look at it astrologically, then I would be concerned about rectification, which I don't know how to do. Okay, some people are great at rectification, but then it's so much guesswork. No matter how holistically I look at you, nobody knows you more than you. Like what I love that Mark Bayersky said, no one has the power over you. No one has the power over you. Nobody knows you more than you. I can provide insights. Only you can tell me if that applies to you. And it's difficult to tell because, we know ourselves only partially. This is medicine. Anything that pretends to be more rigorous than that is not it's cargo called sciences, to be particular. Okay, I have no problem doing astrology. I have no problem. I'm not I'm not a trained magician. I have no problem learning about magic or experimenting with magic. I have no problem with that. I have no problem doing aromatherapy. Yeah, I have a problem when people say they can know about you, no matter what charts they have, no matter what concrete events they based, no matter how many things they predicted successfully. When people say, oh, I know about you more than you. Oh, you should do this. You should absolutely do that. oh, this is good for you, oh, this is not good for you, for sure. If you and if I can tell you, well, according to what I see, I don't know, let's say you have feet issues like me, right? So Sagittarius, Pisces ruled with Jupiter in Saturn sign, Jupiter retrograde in Capricorn, yeah. And then my feet, the bones in my feet, okay, my feet structure is being off, okay. And I talked about, I have to do it by feet series, but I talked in length about my journey with that. So let's say you have a feet problem, and let's say you are working on your feet, and people expect you to do many things at once. Then I would say, but my darling, a part of the feet is also your lifestyle. Okay, so yeah, maybe you cannot quit your job now, but you need to understand, at least tend to it, that your job is harming your lifestyle, which is harming your feet. And as you tend to your feet, you might get more significant solutions, or your path of life will clear up. We can see it. We can try it and go. We can experiment. We have something to experiment. You will tell me if that applies. Not I will tell you. You will tell me if that applies. That's the issue. It's not what language do I speak about. It's not if I remember the muscle or the bone that is, and if it's distal or not, or like you won't know it, right? Unless you are a medically trained professional and so on and so forth. Um, there are so many cases where people went through medical surgeries for no reason, unnecessarily. On the other hand, there are so many cases where people say, don't go to a doctor, you can handle this yourself, and the person died with new medicine. We have these cases where people had cancer, they didn't treat it, and it was growing. Okay, it is okay if you treat a cancer holistically, and in the beginning perhaps it's a bit growing, and then you see reduction. Like there are also these cases where you hear about people who attended to their emotional needs, moon or whatnot, and like I'm not saying this does not happen. And eventually you would need to look at something holistically when you're having, even if you are having chemotherapy. But it's like, if it's not working, seek help. And with some certain types of cancer, yes, that can be. But then if you are receiving chemotherapy and you're given beta blockers against nausea, you may die. I was shocked. I was coming to volunteer to ask to see if I can volunteer for several units at the hospital, and one of them was oncological. And I was just looking at the prospect, and I saw olanzapine is given to people against nausea if they receive chemo, and I was like, I didn't speak. I just didn't return there because I was like, I speak with you. I speak with you. Because some cases people give olanzapine to people if they have nausea. Nausea, like first, like I knew that it was given to people who deal with trauma, so they were categorized as psychotic, and they given that to, yeah, and it killed so many people. I was given that following my Me Too trauma and my psychologist trauma, and I was like, okay, I will try that and see what happens, because and I nearly died. It caused me sugar drops. So I said, okay, sugar drops is not something easy to diagnose. You can easily miss out in the ER. Sugar drops, and the ER personnel were very kind. So it was not me complaining about the people who tried to help me. They just gave me something in the water, and because I dried out, and then I had to heal all by myself, channeling, basically, because that's what I had. Okay, the social person, the social worker was a week off. My then friend was at their parents' house, and I was all alone without anybody to help, without anybody to call, and I had to go down from these by myself. And I had sugar drops, so I had to balance this out and with channeling. And there was even a channeler that tried to help me, and she did it like her stuff was not useful. So it's like all it was all just me resolving this case in myself, and I'm here. You can see, still alive, fortunately, not having sugar drops. Um, okay, fine. Then I learned it's also given to people who have heart conditions, and that is very scary. I know people who have had heart attacks. It's like it's very scary. So I understand why they prescribe it, but after so many deaths and so many complications, okay, like we're not lacking in technology. So those things I'm concerned about way more than an astrologer telling you that this thing can save your life, this thing can this thing can that. What I am concerned about, and there was a post about fertility, like is Saturn relating to your fifth house means infertility, or will just have children later? It's like we don't freaking know. We don't freaking know. Can it delay children? It can. Can it just means that you have children with someone who is age has age gap in you? It can. Will it cause infertility? I don't know. But I definitely will not stop taking precautions if you don't want to currently have children, because you say, oh, I have Saturn. And a medical person, okay, MDs would say, oh, you have this situation in your ovaries, or you have this situation, I don't know, with your sperm, right? And you can't have children, you're infertile. As- Maybe, maybe, okay, maybe. Like, I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. That is something I'm way more concerned about than somebody saying, "Oh, this like if you take this will save your baby" or something like that. Maybe it will. In general, when it comes to magic, and I've said it a couple of times, magical talismans. I know that they were assigned to people who did not know astrology in past eras. I do think that using magical talismans is wonderful. It can be great because the profession is so risky, and because the ontological unit of a human being is so particular. Understand that there is a risk factor. Okay, there is a risk factor. You don't know exactly what's going to happen with you, with your chart. I know Christopher Warnock and I think also Krasia Tasio do offer consultation for talismans, so that can give you a bit more insight. That being said, it's highly likely that they're already giving these consultations to people who understand astrology. So, and B, you definitely want to like understand astrology. Okay, like understand that most vendors will provide a chart, and you can always ask for someone for a chart. Okay, they'll give it to you unless they're like completely off and they're just I don't know trying to do a retail what and like oh let's put a star in there and let's see what happens. I'm like okay that can be way too risky, but most people will be able to provide for you a chart and the ritual what they did. So most people will be able to do that. And you don't forget these things, okay? When spirit calls in, you don't forget what she said usually. You remember what happened when you did that. You remember what you saw because it was a whole ritual, it was a whole ceremony of channeling that. Um, Even if you go by pick a tricks or that, if it works, then something happens, and then you remember what happens, and you can usually say that. So for those things, yes, absolutely, like it's okay to experiment, but just understand that it is an intricate topic and it always interacts with your chart and you need to check. Other than that, it's lovely. I always recommend both with crystals and with talismans, like take a snapshot. You sometimes see when I do my videos that are with the chart, and if I go through my phone, then you sometimes see, like a Sphere and Sundry page open, or Hellwise page open, or Christopher Warnock's talisman, and I'm like, why is that? Because I I think about what do I want? I want this, I want that, what is helpful, what is this, and how does it work with me? Then, even if you do it with crystals, then you do it with energy. If it's crystals like moldavite or something that's very potent and the talisman is very potent, then you do work with energy first. And when the time is right and for the right talismans, you do get the purchase, and also you see that you get the talisman at the right time. People will get we're getting Mercury talisman at the Mercury day, or Venus talisman got delayed and then they met a partner or whatnot. Like currently, I'm waiting for my Venus talismans and it just delayed. Um, I don't know. So you see that, and that allows you for more mitigation and for more experimentation, because yes, these things can be life changing. Okay, can these things save lives? Absolutely. Will they necessarily save life for you? We don't know. Okay, that is something I'm like that somebody says, well, this will for sure cure your so and so. As long as they maintain and do no harm, I'm just, you know, I'm way more. I think that we need to tend to that, but I think the more pressing issue is when people apply to authority, and and that is more dangerous. The application to authority, the I am an MD, I learned in that and that Ivy League university. That nobody tells you about the plagiarism, human trafficking, and sex trafficking that's happening there. And if you say no, then you get to be a Me Too victim. But they are educated. Okay, I'm way more concerned about applying to authority in our argumentation than than saying, well, I made this thing. It can cure your ADHD. It cured mine. It's like, okay, maybe. Good. Maybe I'll try it. Why not? And you know what? Maybe it can help. As long as you keep the do no harm. Okay? And to do the do no harm, basically all you really need to do is like, what are the ingredients? What am I basing my judgment on? Okay, and if it's not a talisman but an astrological reading, you like this is the date that this is your natal chart. This is what I calculated. This is what I see. One of the most unnerving cases where I had when I was doing composite readings in the beginning of my practice was that somebody told me, "Oh my God, you're so accurate. You're so this. You're so that." And then I was like, "Oh my God, I'm reading the wrong charts." And I didn't pass out. I told her, "I'm sorry, lady. I was reading the wrong charts, but let's look at the right charts and see what's happening. Maybe you have an issue that is somehow similar to these issues, but portrayed by different planet, and this is why you relate to this." Okay, and lo and behold, like I was reading the wrong chart and she was telling me you're so accurate. So that happens too. Okay, and as I practice my astrology and I practice spirit of matter, I try to predict what will I see in a chart, and sometimes see, and you see it's a holistic system. Let's say, let's take the fertility thing. So fertility, it can be Saturn, it can be any outer planet, because outer planets move slowly and they can delay the results of the inner planet as well. Okay, that can also, but it can also give duration. One of the discoveries was of Lada Doncheva, that she, if I don't remember if it was her discovery or not, so like if it was yours and she just quoted you, then pardon. But I heard it from her, and she said that Uranus is not only the relationships that are make or break, and you don't. It's not only Saturn. Uranus can also give you in itself a relationship that is long lasting and revivifies your life as well, because it's a slow moving planet. Okay, and maybe it's got nothing to do with that. Maybe it's some asteroid we haven't discovered and was in the way. Okay, and the factor C. Okay, we're guessing. I know it's life and death. I know it's, will I be able to have a child? Will I be able, in this case of astrology, will I have a love? Will I have this? I don't know, darling. I don't know. I can say that what I see in the chart, and I can say, okay, here is one thing I see, that if this chart is the correct chart, because I don't know how to rectify charts, and even the people who do can make mistakes, um, that looks like something you might want to consider. Did I not have cases where I was asking a person if they deal with certain, like looking at the sixth house and saying, okay, you can deal with like so and so, thinking come up in your help, and they told me, oh my god, this is so true, this is something that I'm dealing with. Yes. Would I say, oh, well, you're going to have this and that ailment, now you must do this and that? Like, no, because I don't know. This is so important. Your MD is not more trained than your shaman. They're differently trained. Your astrologer is not more or less trained in medicine than your MD. They're differently trained. Both of them can have pros and cons. That's just, it's just a tautology. And I didn't even get into politics. All the while, innovation that we know in science and in applied science happens when individuals take risky actions on themselves and develop a new field of study. Okay, this is what Caitlin Kaplan did with Sphere and Sundry. People left her. Nobody would give Caitlin Kaplan a grant to develop Sphere and Sundry in an academic institutionalized standard. Like we don't care how many we don't care how privileged, non-privileged, people of color, non people of color, woman, man. Nobody would give Caitlin Kaplan a grant to develop Sphere and Sundry. Okay, Sphere and Sundry would be chaos theory of the magical field, not because of doing chaos magic, but the chaos theory would happen in the 70s, in the 80s, and then even in the 50s. No person was willing to vouch for anybody doing research in chaos theory. It looked too complex, too intricate, too much like we don't know, like how can we even know something there? And nobody wanted to risk their name in here. One of the applications of chaos theory is the heart. I don't know how do you call it. In Hebrew, it's like a stuff. The thing you put in the heart and it regulates your heartbeat. Of chaos theory. No beta blockers. Okay. But then they try to do that with the brain. And I remember when I learned about it, I was like, oh, we can do that with the brain. And my friend was more stern and was like, but like there can be bugs. And I'm like, but we can do that with the brain. It's like there can be bugs, and indeed, like I'm very lucky that it was not me that was trying to do that. But indeed, where the actual reality of people who tried this, there were cases of people who went in and out of hospital and they couldn't do anything, and it was like horrid, horrid. Like a bug in something that regulates your brain is really bad. Um, but then so are beta blockers. So yeah, so yeah, you did like it could go, one way or the other way. And so with standardization, which is why I'm so much of the many reasons I'm so much questioning the ability of us to do standardization without hurting the experimental stage of science that is so necessary. And if a person cannot charge for a reading without having gone through certain dogma, then we will have no innovation in our field. We will be stagnant. Physics looks at the science of non-scientists to try to model what they do. Okay? Medical research is looking at traditional Chinese medicine to try to model how do they manage to diagnose, so many things that Western medicine cannot diagnose, and so many people die and get wrong treatment because of that. All the while, those people, we are the inspiration for the medical people. We are the inspiration for the medical research. Okay, I didn't come to those weird fields for no reason. Channeling science was the previous name of this. Now it's Spirit of Matter. It was channeling science. It was basically trying to channel insights from science. Like I was looking at us guys, the channelers, the shamans, the astrologers, for inspiration. Because innovation is not funded by tradition. So also when I look at traditional astrology, or when I look at magic, or when I look at this, or when I look at that, I'm like, okay, yes, I look at the past, I look at what people did in the past and how people looked at things in the past. I don't necessarily adapt it, one by one, because we live in the present. And there was a beautiful post about astrology. I don't remember who posted that, about different astrologers. I'm sorry, yeah, different people experiencing an astrological placement. I think it was Saturn in Capricorn or Jupiter in Capricorn. I don't remember. Differently when they come from different cultures because they look at it differently. If you take the view of karma, okay, then in India, I don't know. You can feel absolutely free to educate me here because I'm not that educated at that. So what I figured is like you have karma, you believe, let's say something happened to you, so it's probably something you did not well or something that you didn't tend to in the past, and now something terrible is happening in your life, and now you have all these tools and all these remedies to tend to that so you can pay your karma and heal. Okay, as a person who is surviving sexual boundary violation and abuse in childhood, and then of course in academia and workplaces, private sector, blah blah blah, and in therapy, then I say, okay, if I think about the psychologist who was violent to me, okay, do I think that I want, and he was violent by making me regress to childhood and then hurt the child. Okay, so this was especially concerning. It was not just me, the woman, he was having problems, he was me, the child. So he was trying to get me, the child, into the room, and he really, his eyes was shining like a child when I was in the room, and it was exciting to see. And then something came up, I don't know what, and then he started being violent to me, the child. So I don't know, okay? Like obviously, it's something that he needs help with. Would I want him to experience what I experienced with him in like his in next life? No. Do I think that he can learn? Like no, no. I'm not looking for this kind of vengeance. I'm looking to heal something. Okay, to be healthy myself and to heal something. Not that I heal them, but it was like that's not the way I look at karma. Okay, do I listen to Hanuman mantra on a Tuesday and or Lakshmi mantra on a Friday? Yes, yes. I have, and you know what? If you are the type of person who think, oh, people harm me for no reason. I saw in the interview with Austin Kopuk on Pisces in Astrology podcast, which was fascinating. He said, people harm me for no reason, what seems to be no reason. I believe I did something in the past life, and this is why this is happening to me. So he gets to be more compassionate towards these people. So he uses this karma notion not for vengeance, like maybe my psychologist used. I don't know. Even though past life like reading showed that I was the victim there, and I was the victim in this life too. So it was not like Indian said. And I thank Ksenia Moore for her refreshing view on Saturn opposition Venus or Saturn square Venus, that it is not the traditional view, okay, that oh, you probably did something in your past life and so now you have no relationship. No, you probably were a victim of intense abuse, sometimes sexual abuse, and now Saturn delays relationship until you cultivate the self-love that you need to be safe in your sensuality and for the relationships to come to you when you're already ready for that and can experience sensual joy and experience a relationship that is healthy. Okay? Hey, a whole other worldview. For me, Ksenia Moore's view works the best. For other people, the traditional view of karma is like, oh, this happened to me because I did something terrible, now I have to pay off the karma. Good. Like, if it works for you, go, who am I to tell you what to believe in? It doesn't matter how many gurus said that before. It doesn't matter if they studied in Ivy League or not. It doesn't matter on what mountain they said and how many times, how many decades they meditated. If it works for you, then this is what works for you for now. That is what I care about. And it was so important for me to put this out there because I have been watching people making astrology accountable for no reason. And on the other hand, people losing the grace, so to speak, by trying to imitate a science that tries to imitate them. You know, if we do, let's talk about Saturn. Saturn rules the skin. Amongst other things, also Mercury rules the skin, which makes sense because it's about the nervous system as well, and the skin is also about stress. If you're stressed, it doesn't matter how many vitamins you eat, you're not going to absorb them. But if you absorb them, then it allows you to give yourself more leeway to get less stressed and to try to creatively design your life in a better way. Knowing that there is also, you know, the world, right? So, Saturn rules the skin. And you see, funny thing about in the world, celebrities, governors, famous people who have white skin try to tan their skin in all kinds of ways that are sometimes life risking. And on the other hand, people who have melanin, like people who, they're like, we all have melanin, but you know, people who have dark skin, beautiful dark skin, try to bleach their skin. And it's like, it's happening with the sciences as well. Okay, sciences that are, you know, considered rigorous, exact science, you know, like physics, like conventional medicine. Okay, they try to learn from the East. They try to learn from the tradition. They try to learn from the charlatans. How do they do that? How do they manage to diagnose these things? And it usually happens in a way that you've been having something and something happened in your life. Okay, I was studying epistemics of, you know, medicine, and then Me Too happened in my life, and I'm like, oh wait, the principle of the doubt that gave me so much peace of mind. If you talk about the doubt that Shakespeare quoted, which is, you know, kind of like holding the skull, is like we don't know what happens after that, and the kind of calming doubt. Then suddenly I was in a case where I was asked to know something because I had to save my life, and there was no anything logical. It was not logical. Yes, there was sexual harassment. Like, I wasn't even talking about that. This person was trying to do things actually to control, like a psychic, and I couldn't talk about this. Okay, back then. So what I was looking at, it was like I had to connect with my body, and I had to recenter myself in my body. Now, a person who suffered trauma, as a child, then they try to escape, right? It's like it's difficult to process what's in the body because the body has memory, and they are, even though the cells are dying all the time, there is memory. Our memory goes through. So it's like, oh, I had to heal my trauma, and then I went to a therapist, and then he was violent. So, you know, um, so I was, you know, then this is how channeling science started, because I said, okay, what I was in the academia, and then there was this person who was like, yes, sexual harassment, but the thing that was really bothering me is that he was doing stuff. People call it gaslighting, people call it this, people call it that. Unfortunately, we have, you know, the internet, so there are more people dealing with these things. And I'm like, okay, so this is not something that you can logically conclude from something or argue for and against something. It is something where it's not, what is asked of me is not to cast doubt, but actually to know and to get the fuck off out of here. And I was like, okay, so now let's see what else can this channeling, can this knowing bring. Maybe it can bring scientific revelations. Okay, that was my point of view. Yeah, so if I came from academic, you know, looking at you, then yes, it is okay, and it's good that if you come with intuition from the intuitive part, then you say, okay, I want to learn about how do scientists to make their decisions. Maybe there's something I can learn from there, you know, about my field. You know, you know, if you think about correlation and factor C. So there's a lot about channeling where I can say, well, there could be a factor C, that I'm the vessel. Like, of course, I'm biased, and I love to look at. I didn't do it with this episode. I love to look at. Okay, this is the chart of the hour. This is how the planets are associated. Um, let's see what what will they yield when I look at this topic. And usually they do yield a particular point of view that if I had recorded the same topic in a different hour, I would be talking about different things. And the planets do correlate with those divergence. We always look for divergence when we try to look at phenomena, because this divergence tells us that, oh, that if we change this factor, something different happens, then this factor has an effect on the system. You know, take my statistic teacher, Galerielli, probably professor by now. So for like this insight, we look for divergence. So yeah, when I do channeling, I will look at those things that are kind of logical to center myself when I do concluding or I don't know, debate or whatnot. Then I would also look at channeling. I would also look at the astrology of the chart. Okay, when I was learning about philosophers, then I really like to read their childhood and see how is their life story prompting what they believed in their teaching. And usually it did. They had a particular point of view. Mind you, this is a beautiful hairstyle. Is Mercury doing something with Saturn right now? Anybody? Venus, Mercury, Saturn. I think Venus was separate. Saturn is in 7 degrees Pisces. No, this is absolutely gorgeous. Mercury retrograde in Taurus. I don't know, something like delineate this for me if you're watching. Whatever. Anyway, so when it comes to astrology, are we charlatans? Are we not charlatans when we talk about medical stuff or we talk about health? No, we're not charlatans. No, your MD cannot necessarily do better. No, we cannot necessarily do better than your MD. Yes, we try to do no harm. We're whoever we are, whatever we are, we're mostly guessing. Your MD is mostly guessing too, and we just hope for the best. So, in good health, and yeah, that was the video for today. I'm Shirley with Spirit of Matter, here doing more and more stuff that I actually was looking at in the academia and getting to speak to the world about a different point of view through a different media that is not, research, peer reviewed, blah, 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 that nobody reads. And the people who read are too busy proving me wrong when they're actually, abusing their patients in the astral so that they will not be able to talk about it, but get better bloggers if they do on another level. That being said, if you are dealing with healing from sexual abuse or healing from non dual experiences, you are not imagining, you're not to blame. No, it's not that they don't believe you because they think you're a liar. They usually have skeletons in the closet. I used to think that this was so, that they were just not knowing. Some people not knowing. Now, they usually have skeletons in the closet, so they put certain theories out there and call it scientific dogma so that you cannot speak and get validation and get healing from your trauma, whether sexual or not. This is not okay. This needs to change. We deserve to be happy. Adieu.